I'm very happy to be in Mumbai. It's my first time in Mumbai, but the second time in India. And I want to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to be here. And if yesterday is anything to go by, I think I want to stay in Mumbai. Now, taking a cue from our speakers yesterday, especially for Vivalda, I want to say that I got into developmental pediatrics because I was a bit tired of clinical pediatrics. I wanted something more. And in my one-year training abroad in the UK at the time, I had a course on developmental pediatrics. And I decided I wanted to stay for another 1 year. So I stayed for a year. And during the process of assessing a child for hearing, during the process of doing developmental assessment at Donald Winnicott Center in the UK, I suddenly realized that the free field sound that I gave the child responded to it, and I didn't hear it. I tried again, and the child responded, and I didn't hear it. And then I reassured the mom that everything was fine, called in the audiologist because it was a multidisciplinary center, and I said, could you do my hearing test? And then she did, and there it was, a mid-frequency dip, right to 55 dB at 2 kilohertz, right down. And then she went to the developmental pediatrician, the consultant in charge, Sue Bellman at the time, and said, Sue, see Bola's audiogram. And Sue asked me 3 questions. The first was, Bola, how did you survive? Then I said, oh yes, in Nigeria we shout. So I got by. And she wasn't satisfied. Next question, why do you speak so well? This time it was longer, because I remembered that I had speech difficulty as a child. And like Scott, I used the mirror for a different purpose. This time, because they made so much fun of me. Stigma was very troubling for me as a child. I would sit in front of the mirror and I would practice. There were no speech therapists. Nobody knew I had a problem. So I was my own speech therapist, sitting right in front of the mirror and practicing to be able to display to those who made fun of me that I could do it. And I did. And the third question was that, how did you cope in the medical school? This was just 26 years ago. Again, it was longer. How did I cope? I was a front row bencher all through school. And once I was put at the back of the class, I failed. And you can trust an African mother. My mother was in school the next day, instructing the teacher to move me into the front row, which he did. And then I remembered, like Scott said, that there is ability also in disability. Because of the dip, I don't hear whispers. So I was able to focus. You understand? No friends. So you see, I'm going to take you now to the story of my life and my research background. Because in a way, I started with developmental pediatrics. But because of what I found, the course of my results and the publications changed. And I became also an advocate. So the context of this presentation is going to be top-down. I'm going to look at the top. Because for us in the developing world, we focus more on things that are global. You will find that in the developed countries, they have their own policies. For us, all our policies are based on what the global agenda is. So the current sustainable goals state that no child should be left behind, which is good for us. With the MDGs, we were left out. We had no chance. And we're looking at the full integration of every child at risk, or every child that is disabled, into the family first, and then the community. And this is in recognition of the fact that disabled children are the most at risk of being left behind. I want you to also note that in the current SDGs, there is a specific target 4.2 that gives access to regular assessments of children 5 years and under who are developmentally on track in health, learning, and psychosocial well-being. So now we have a platform, and I want us to think about that platform, because you see, it's not just for us who are disabled, it's for everybody. And the able-bodied ones are stronger, like Scott said. They can run faster, and they have more resources. So, but we can hold the train from leaving the station. So we can keep the doors open until we're sure everyone is inside. So what did I do? I know that we need data. So I had to go in search of data. And the children with disabilities encompass intellectual, sensory, motor, speech and language, and psychosocial. So what does this tell us? Now, this is the GBD data for 2016, from 1990 to 2016. And these are the disabilities that are there. So this is baseline. Now we need to look and say, what is missing? What do we have? But what is interesting in this data is that for 26 years, very little has changed. 1990, 2016, very little, except for vision, very little has changed because focus has not been on disabilities. Then the next question is, where are these children mostly located? Of course, the children are everywhere. You can see the graph. But they're mostly located in Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia for intellectual disabilities. And now we have a new term, years lived with disability. You see, with mortality, we don't stand a chance. But then with disability, we now have a value. We can now look at years lived with disability and say, yes, we are important. At least we know that we need help. Let's look at hearing loss. And it takes the same pattern as intellectual disability. Now with epilepsy, we are moving to Brazil, to South America. Vision loss, now more widespread. Also going to Europe. Look at ADHD. Almost everywhere except India and Africa. We have to ask our Indian friends what they are doing right and the rest of the world is not doing. Now see autistic spectrum disorders. Everywhere, all over, all over. Now we've seen the world. We're coming back home. How do the society perceive disabilities? And for us, it's so important because this is where we think we are failing. is regarded as possible punishment from deity. And not too long ago, remember that we were even killing our twins because we think they were different. So our society is one that does not like difference. And also attribute it to household wickedness. And because we're so religious, the faith-based, the traditional, means that we never really accept the problems. So the problem becomes a source of embarrassment and persistent grief, which often leads to infanticide. And if the child is lucky to be alive, then the child is sent away or hidden from view. And the persistent rejection of the disabled child often leads to family instability and breakup. Now, to summarize what I have said, I'm just going to give you the codes in colors. So we're going to look at the process of grief. The shock, the pink is for the family. So the family is in shock. So what happens? The child is rejected. So the child takes the bash. Then denial and anger. The child is neglected, or the child, if he's lucky, I say, is killed. And then the society stigmatizes them, excludes them. Not just the child, the whole family. So what's the result? Isolation of the child, physical, sexual abuse. The child has no place. And to summarize this, I'm going to give you this story. We all woke up one morning to this story in the news. This is a child, maybe about 13, 14, 15, we don't know, who has been locked in a little room in that house behind her for 10 good years. And all the child receives is a weekly visit from, who knows, a member of the family every week, just a weekly visit. But then the other tenants in the house normally hears a strange sound from the room. Nobody knew what was in there. And the strange sound meant that they had to call in the police. And when they forced the door open, here was the girl that had been in that room for 10 years because of what I see as a little disability. The question is, how many more of such do we have? We don't know. There's no statistics. So children with intellectual disabilities are there. Dyslexia is another part of me. I have 2 children that are dyslexic, but we won't talk about them today. The hidden one, or the poor signal-to-noise ratio. And to show up this, I'm going to show the room, the picture that you're seeing on the screen. And this is very recent in a village. Because we have free-range cattle, they suddenly took over the school. I don't know if you have it in India, but they took over the school and took over the classroom. And then for those schools that are located in towns, they are situated right in the market. So you can see the competitive disadvantage that we have. So when you talk about intellectual disabilities, we still have classrooms like this, makeshift classrooms. We have biological problems. And we have the signal-to-noise ratio that is below the level that is approved. So what did we find in our own study? When we looked, we found 20.9% of middle ear abnormalities, 13.9% of...
I'm so sorry. 2 minutes, please.
...of hearing abnormalities, and visual impairment of 6.7%. Educational did not bring any significant result. Nutritional deficiency was associated with hearing loss in school children. And our approach, as you've all heard, is multidisciplinary approach. You've heard about team leadership, linkage with other professionals, and the important thing is being a change agent. So I will not dwell on that, but I will dwell on this slide, which is the opportunistic signs of child abuse. I say to my colleagues, look, every opportunity that you have to see a child, you want to look for signs. A sign of child neglect, an unhappy child, and an excluded child. And for us, advocacy, as you heard it, is a major thing to also consider. And to end it all, I'm going to tell you the story of my little adopted son in the hospital. From day 6, you can see the divergent eyes, severe kernicterus, a level of 39 milligrams per DL of bilirubin. At 11 months, that's how he sits. At 24 months, he can't walk, but he can hold on to things and see the way the hand control is. But with support, we are able to get the child now with hearing aids. He's in school, he's talking. He talked to me on the phone before I left. So thank you very much for listening.